Hi everyone, welcome back to Trees and Turtles. My name's Imogen, and in today's video I'm going to be exploring how I made 2023 the year of getting my finances in order and how you too can get your finances in order. Okay, so if you're not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe, follow my Instagram, the link is on my homepage and in the description, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so when I was looking at my goals for the year in January, because everybody looks at their goals for the year in January, I noticed that I hadn't really been paying very much attention to my financial goals. You know, I was never bad with money, but I was never great with money, and I wanted to become better with money. So I decided that the first thing I needed to do, and the first thing I recommend you do as well, is to set clear financial goals. Okay, so basically you sort of define specific, measurable, achievable goals. It might be paying off debts. You might have savings goals, like for example, I wanted to save for a car, I wanted to save for car insurance, I wanted to start saving for a house deposit, things like that. And you might want to invest, for example, so all of those are clear goals. You might want to invest a certain number, like you might want to start by investing £100 and then you gradually increase it, or you might want to build an emergency fund of £2,000, for example. So change the numbers, but make yourself a specific and measurable financial goal. Okay, step 2 is to create a budget. So without knowing where all your money is coming from and where all your money is going, then you have a snowball's chance in hell of meeting your financial goals. So I made a big spreadsheet, like budget tracker kind of thing, and it had years along the bottom, so it's got my budgets for the next decade sorted basically. And then in each year I had months going across, and then I had the amount I wanted to spend and the amount I was actually spending, so I could monitor my real budget versus my ideal budget and see where the discrepancies were and see where I was spending too much or spending too little, and I could adjust the categories. For example, I was contributing to my emergency fund a set amount each month, I was investing a set amount each month, and that fed into other aspects of my plan, so my saving and investing goals. So the budget is kind of where all of your investing and saving and financial goals come together, and it is really a sort of a cornerstone of your financial well-being. So create a budget. Also make sure you reduce your impulse spending. If this is a problem for you, it wasn't a massive problem for me, but if you give yourself like a fun budget, this is what I did, then you're able to just spend that money on whatever you want, whether it's self-care or, you know, a million lattes or whatever you want. You should be able to have a budget that you spend guilt-free on fun stuff, just for your own well-being, because I think that's important. And if you make your budget too strict, then you're just going to end up not budgeting, and that will be worse for you overall. So give yourself a little budget for impulse spending, but include it in the budget. Okay. The next thing, which I have mentioned just previously as well, is to build an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is basically a fund of money, obviously, which you save for emergencies. So it might be like your car breaks down is a classic example of an emergency. If you don't have a car, maybe you have to go somewhere on really short notice and you have to buy a hella expensive hotel and you have to buy a hella expensive train ticket. Like a family member is sick and you have to go see them right now. That kind of thing is an emergency fund, and that's definitely emergency fund territory, and it's a really nice sort of financial cushion for you to avoid getting into debt or spending money you didn't intend to spend. So the first priority after getting a budget and setting your goals is to build an emergency fund. Okay, and then after that you have time to set your other savings goals and investment goals. So for example, I mentioned earlier that I had some goals to save for a house deposit, save for a car, and then after my emergency fund, those were my two biggest goals. I've got some other goals that are maybe more personal that I could talk about in some other videos, but those were two big goals, and you might have your own savings goals, like you might want to save for a big holiday. I want to go to San Francisco next year, so I'm going to start contributing to my travel fund soon. And anyway, yes, so decide your savings goals, and it's also worth setting up an investment account. So the investment account I use is called Moneybox. This is not sponsored, I just use them. And they basically have an app, and it's really simple to invest. You can set up an investment account and start investing from like £1, I think, or £10 maybe. I'll put a link in the description. And yeah, so they basically put your money into these things called index funds, which are basically a mix of like stocks that are automatically calibrated, so you don't have to do any sort of weird work behind the scenes. It's sort of very accessible way to get into investing, and I highly recommend it because investing is for everyone increasingly in the modern age with lots of technologies that make it increasingly more and more accessible. So I think everybody should get into investing. It's kind of acts as a hedge against inflation, and it makes you feel more in control of your money, or at least it does that for me. Okay, the next step is to automate your finances. So if you have direct debits, set up direct debits to pay off like your phone bill every month, or like if you have a credit card, set them up to pay off your credit card. I don't have a credit card yet, but maybe in the future. I also have automated contributions going into my investment account, so I never have to think about that money. It goes straight in and I never see it. I never think about spending it. It goes straight into my investment account. Automate your finances. It's a life hack. Okay, the next item doesn't apply to everyone, but reduce your debt. So know what your debt is. For example, my debt at the moment is basically just student debt, and I won't pay that off until I earn over the repayment threshold, which I think is about 27k. Again, I will put details in the description, but be aware of your debt and have a plan for paying it off, if applicable. Obviously, student debt's kind of more like a graduate tax, but whatever, I guess. Anyway, have a plan to reduce your debt. Okay, and feeding into this is my next tip, which is to track your net worth. And again, this might sound like a stupid thing that rich people do, because what even is net worth? Like, that's a fucking dumb term, right? But basically net worth is all of your assets minus all of your liabilities. So grab yourself a spreadsheet, write down all of the amounts of money you have. So, for example, current account, savings account, investment accounts, the 10 quid you found down the back of the sofa, and then take away from that all of your liabilities, so student debt, for example, and then you get a number, and that number is your net worth. Currently, I have a negative net worth because my student loans are huge, and that's fine because a lot of people do at my age, but I'm earning more, I'm adding more to my savings accounts, and I'm seeing that number slowly go up, or in my case, towards zero, and then hopefully beyond it. But the point is, if you have a negative net worth, don't panic, but it is good to know what it is, and it is good to have a plan for increasing it, and it's very easy to do, so grab yourself a spreadsheet and get on it. Okay, I have a few more tips for you, and the first one is to cut unnecessary expenses. So this kind of goes back to the budgeting thing. Just look at your budget, see if there's stuff that you feel guilty about spending on, or if your spending feels compulsive, or maybe it might help to talk to someone about this if you're feeling like your spending is compulsive. Obviously, I'm not a professional, so I can't help with that. But think about where you're spending maybe more than you should, or just spending on things that you don't want to be spending on. Just be mindful of where you're spending, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the next point kind of ties into this a little bit, because it's not all about sort of restricting your life and cutting things out. You can go the opposite way, which is increasing your income. So obviously, as students, and I'm sure plenty of you are students, or you're young and you're busy, and obviously studies take up a lot of time, so you probably aren't going to be earning full-time. If you're earning full-time, then congrats, well done, you're doing great. Please don't burn out. But also, I would say that if you can increase your income through side hustles, then that's great, like something that's a few hours a week or something like that. Again, fantastic. So, for example, currently I have a job and I also have a side hustle, so I have two sources of income. Well, with student finance, 3, I suppose. But, yeah, so increase your income if you can. Think about side hustles, think about creative ways to make money. Don't stress yourself out, but it's something to be aware of. Kind of tied into that, kind of taking responsibility for your own income, is self-education. So read articles, listen to financial podcasts, watch financial videos. Here you are, good job. But yeah, just educate yourself, learn, read, absorb information, play around with your own budget, play around with your investments, see what works, see what doesn't, learn by trial and error. Don't feel bad about it, because all of this learning is good and all of this learning is learning. So educate yourself, and if you take responsibility for your own financial learning, then you're taking responsibility for your own financial well-being, which can only be a good thing, right? Okay, one final tip is to regularly review and adjust. So keep looking at your budget. For example, my rent went up this year, so I had to adjust my budget. Next year I'll be earning more, so I'm going to be adjusting my savings goals to reflect that increase. And essentially that's kind of all I have to say on that point. Like, keep reviewing your budget, because what worked in your budget last year might not work this year. What worked last month might not work this month. I do have standardised contributions, like the same amount goes to my house fund, or the same amount goes to my emergency fund, the same amount goes to investments, but, you know, if your income increases, maybe increase your savings goals. If your rent increases, then maybe I have to spend less on something else. So that's about all I have for you today. That's how I got my finances in order. I'm thinking of making this into a series about, I might show you my budget or talk about increasing my credit score. So if you're interested in that, pop it in the comments and tell me what you're specifically interested in, because I would honestly love to make a finance series. I genuinely think this is not talked about enough amongst young people. I think we're getting better at it. Like, I think Gen Z is getting better at it, but the more the merrier, honestly. So chuck your ideas in the comments, what you liked, what you didn't like. Make sure to subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next video. Alright, bye!